Eliot, good morning, pal.
What up? How you guys doing this morning?
We're here. We're okay.
Medium.
Trying, yes.
Dude, yesterday was a disaster in Philly sports. Sixers and Flyers blown out. Another day, Eagles, no coordinator. Phillies lose Bader. Brutal.
Yeah, some would just say another day in Philly sports. But yes, it was not a good one.
Well, that's really negative.
So, Eliot, bring us up to...
1 year ago today, we would have been saying very different things.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Eliot, bring us up to speed. I mean, we got a great feel, but for the audience listening, that those that aren't quite as in tune, perhaps, with the twists and turns of the last 24 hours on the coordinator situation, just bring people up to speed, please, on what's the latest with the Eagles' offensive coordinator search.
Yeah, I mean, they're still searching, right? And speed is not a word I would use to describe the search. It's been a long one. I think once they missed out on Brian Daboll and Mike McDaniel, they slowed down, right? And they decided this could be a long search. They can meet with a lot of people. It's something they didn't get to do last year when they immediately hired Kevin Patullo. So I do think that is part of it. Two new candidates were reported yesterday. Frank Smith of the Miami Dolphins, his background is in offensive line play, which I do like. I think watching the playoffs, one thing that's very clear is the Eagles just didn't run the ball well enough this year and didn't get good offensive line play. And I think any start of the offense going back to what it could be has to begin with that. So I do like Frank Smith's background in offensive line play. Gerard Johnson, quarterback coach for the Texans, he kind of is like Bobby Slowick in the way that his claim to fame is that 2023 season with C.J. Stroud, and since then hasn't been great. Now, neither of those guys have called plays, and I know going into this we all thought calling plays would be, potentially a requirement for anybody they hire, and it still could, but the list of guys they've interviewed, a decent amount of them have not called plays.
So, Eliot, again, with this offense coordinator situation, all these twists and turns, one of the things we've been discussing today is whether fans should give the Eagles the benefit of the doubt with their tremendous track record over the last 9 years, making the playoffs 8 times, making the Super Bowl 3 times, winning it twice. Benefit of the doubt to say, I trust Jeffrey and Howie to get it right, or like this one feels different and I don't. How would you come down on that conundrum?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting question. I guess I view this whole thing, and I view that question like a little differently, right? If we're talking about just the hire, just the hire itself, no, I don't think they deserve the benefit of the doubt. Because if you look at their recent coordinator hires, they've been very hit or miss, right? 2 of the last 3 have been fired after 1 year. Sean Desai was fired halfway through the season. So their results in coordinators have not been great. Now, despite all that, they have had success, obviously. And so when I think about the benefit of the doubt moving forward, I view it like I do the offensive coordinator thing in the way where it comes down to what do you think of Nick and Jalen, right? Because ultimately this coordinator will be as good as Nick and Jalen were. That was the case last year. It was the case with Kellen Moore. It was the case with Brian Johnson. Like, they're always just as good as the head coach and the quarterback because they have more say and more input on how this offense is run, how it is ultimately performed, because Jalen is the one out on the field. So I guess when it comes to the benefit of the doubt for the search itself, no, they've been pretty hit or miss with these coordinator hires. I just don't think that we will know if they got the hire correct or not based off the candidate itself. I think it'll come down to if Sirianni is better than he was last year and if Jalen is better than he was last year.
Eliot, we've had a couple. Well, Mike McDaniel didn't make it to town. We were told our top offensive coordinator choice didn't make it here. Declan Doyle and Charlie Weiss Jr. decided to stay in jobs, and these are young guys who I don't have all the experience in the world. Whose face is being slapped, essentially? Is it the front office? Is it the quarterback? Is it the head coach? Whose face is most being slapped by people essentially declining the offer to interview for our offensive coordinator spot?
Yeah, so I think in this case, it is a rare instance where it is all of them, right? I do think that it's all the factors together combined that just make this not a super attractive job because Nick is an offensive head coach. Jalen is a quarterback that has a Super Bowl resume. And, rightfully so, should be somewhat stubborn in what he does on the field. Like, if I'm Jalen, I'm not just sitting there and going, all right, whoever it is, come in here and tell me how I should perform, when he has obviously had a winning track record and has had a great career so far. So I think the tough part about this, plus you add in the Howie dynamic, we know he is the most important person in that building. He has a ton of say over everything that happens. Like, if you're a coordinator that's coming in here, you just don't have a lot of power. Like, you don't really get a ton of say on what the offense looks like, because it has to revolve around Jalen and it has to fit into what Nick wants on a larger scale, right? The player personnel thing, we know Howie has control over that. So if I'm Declan Doyle or Charlie Weiss, like, yes, you probably get a pay raise. You get to be in the NFL. There are those exciting parts about it. But when you have the power, which they have right now, I don't know why you would use your one big swing on a job where you're not going to have a lot of say on your future.
Well, hold on,
like,
Eliot. Eliot, there's a case that the Eagles might give the coordinator more power than a coordinator normally has.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of people saying they. So you don't believe?
That's just a lie.
Okay, you don't believe
I mean,
it. Okay.
It's not that I don't believe it. It's just like, it's just a made-up thing. I mean, Kellen Moore came in here, and all offseason it was he has full autonomy. Like, what does Nick do? Blah, blah. And then a few weeks into the season, it was, well, they're just going to run the ball a ton because that's what they have to do to win, right? I don't think Brian Johnson will probably tell you he got to run the exact offensive scheme he wanted. And I know Kevin Patullo would not tell you he got to run the exact scheme they wanted, right? So this idea of full autonomy, like, it just isn't true. So that's, I think, why they tried to sell that message so hard at the press conference, because they know that's people's concern.
Well, I think, Eliot, I think
they didn't convince anybody.
Eliot, I think you're conflating two issues. There's autonomy to call there's autonomy to design the plays and call the plays, or not autonomy. And then there's the person making the decision what is best given the personnel. I mean, when you reference like they went back to running the ball, well, that's because the personnel obviously demonstrated that they're best when they run the ball. I mean, that's been clear for 5 years.
That's the point. That's the point I'm making. I think we all live in this fantasy world where the coordinator is going to come in and do what he did in other places and do whatever he wants to do and just, have like free for all. Like, that's just not the case. The coordinator that comes in is going to have to run what Jalen is comfortable with and is going to have to run what, to a certain degree, like the large picture, big picture scale that Nick believes in, which is taking care of the ball, and those type of things. So you just don't have the full autonomy that I think we all kind of pretend this coordinator will have.
Joe, I think
so how much longer do you think it's going to take? Where it took 4 days to hire Kellen Moore after when we brought him on board. We're sitting at 14 days at this point. How much longer is it going to take to find an OC, and how concerned should we be that this OC might not be who we prefer?
Well, I think at this point it's definitely not going to be who the fans prefer. I don't think there's any question about that, right? But, I mean, in terms of how long, like, I do think a uniqueness in this, not to make an excuse for them, but I do think there is truth to it. There are so many jobs available in the NFL right now, like head coaching jobs, coordinator jobs. And so I think when you're not the biggest piece on the board, which the Eagles are not, you have to wait for the other moves to be made. Like, the head coaching hires have to be made, because then other coordinators will decide, well, am I better off going, here as opposed to going to the Eagles? So I think if they wanted to hire Matt Nagy today, they could hire Matt Nagy today. Like, I don't. Well, yeah. Well, there you go on the reaction to it. But I mean, so I don't think it's that they don't have anyone that'll take the job. I think it's just with everything going on, everyone's kind of waiting to see the big pieces fall first, and then everything will happen pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, I'd prefer someone good to take the job, and that would not be Matt Nagy.
I mean, look, I'm not the biggest Matt Nagy guy. I do think, he has called plays before. That's a benefit. I think it's probably the most important job, probably the most important part of this guy that they're going to hire. I think he needs to be able to call plays, and I think he needs to have like 10% new ideas. I feel for you, John. I know you're really banking on this offense looking way different than it did last year. I just don't think that's going to be the case. So for me, just a veteran guy that has experience is probably what you're looking for.
And Eliot,
I would be thrilled if he's called plays before. I do feel like that is a prerequisite here. But it's probably not realistic to assume that we're going to get that.
All right, hang on one second. Elliot, hang on one second, because we're with me and John all in different rooms. It's getting harder. Ray, we'll get your point there.
Yeah, I just want I think we all forget the whole Kellen Moore thing is when that was in training camp. I think the expectation was that they were going to run his offense. The Brazil game, Jalen was great, but he also threw 2 interceptions. But he also threw for almost 300 yards, and there was motion in that. Then he played the Falcons game, and he was terrible in it. And it was like they panicked and went, and then they got to 2-2. And that's when they went, nope, we're becoming a run team.
And players went to the coaches and said, let's be a run team.
So, I mean, I think, coordinators could also be going, Kellen was going to get autonomy, and they flipped the switch super fast. And, hey, they won a Super Bowl. It was the right thing to do.
For sure.
And that's kind of the point I'm making, too, because if you look at the beginning of 2024, it was coming off of 23 where Jalen turned it over a ton. Like, the main problems in 23 on the offensive side of the ball were turnovers. If you actually look at what they did on offense, it was probably the best offensive year they've had over the past 3 seasons in a weird way in terms of throwing the ball. But there were just too many turnovers. So I think they came into 2024 kind of like people hope they do this year, right? Like let's keep trying these new things, and it just didn't work. And so I think going into next season, sure, there will be some wrinkles, but Jalen's been in the NFL long enough. Nick has been in the NFL long enough, and they've had enough success where I just think they know what works for them. And with a better offensive line, I think they'll be right back to being a Super Bowl contender next year, even if Patullo was still the offensive coordinator.
Elliot, I want to play some audio for you that Ike said yesterday on WIP. This is borderline astounding. I want to get your reaction to Ike saying this yesterday about this issue, OC, what Ike said yesterday.
You're bringing somebody in who doesn't even know the players. They don't even know the players.
Right. They're going to have to start at 0.
Why not just stick with Kevin Patullo? He's already in the building. He has a working relationship with everyone on the offensive side of the ball, including the head coach. I mean, unless you're telling me he was clueless as an offensive coordinator this year, I don't see the benefit of moving on as opposed to allowing him to continue to develop. And who knows what he would be like in his second year.
Elliot, what's your reaction to that?
I think there's a lot of logic to it. Now, I do think the public backlash of bringing Patullo back would have been so strong, he might have not even had a chance to succeed. Like, I would argue this year, in fact, I feel strongly this year, that he was given an inappropriate amount of blame.
Totally.
Now,
Question.
The offense was not good enough, obviously, but I think with a better offensive line, like, they would have been perfectly fine because then they could have run the ball. The passing game would have basically what it was the year before, and they would have been good to go. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to it. Like, at this point, Kevin Patullo might be the best candidate that they have available. He's coached the offensive players. He does have a good relationship with Nick. He has a full year of play calling experience. He knows the players' strengths and weaknesses. Like, outside of just how mad people would be, I do think there's a strong argument for it.
What about the fact that he dialed up 4 verticals into quarters coverage on the very last play of our season?
Well, okay, so let's talk about that play, right? Because that play, I agree, seems like it was not a good play call. I agree with you on that, right? What about the play before where Devontae was wide open, and if he catches it, they're in the 5-yard line, right? So I get that play call was not good, but that is such a classic example of how it's just not Patullo. Like on the exact
play that mattered
before, most. Well, but how about this? How about Jalen audibles out of something?
Totally.
How about Jalen scrambles around? Like, I get it. The play call was not good enough in that instance. But on that drive, he got guys open on every single play besides the last one.
You want Jalen to audible out of the play that we called a timeout to
call? but John, you don't actually know in the timeout what the defense is going to do. You know
what needed to be dialed up? They needed to say, okay, here it is. It's
can I ask you this, John?
It's 2-jet all-go special. Check to whatever your next play would be that will beat this coverage, and you might have a live color that takes it to another play if you've got another particular coverage. But I don't think we have anywhere close to that level of complexity with our offense.
But why do you think that is? Why do you think they don't have that level of complexity?
I don't know.
Give him the ding. Give him the ding, Elliot. Come on,
I mean, again,
do it. Say it.
How can we know?
Say it, Elliot.
But No, but just as a former player, you don't think they asked Jalen in the huddle before, hey, what do you like here, right? Like their job is to call plays for Jalen. And I hate to always be like pointing the finger at Jalen, but it's the same reason why this time last year we had him as the second quarterback in the NFL.
Every head coach that I had asked the offensive coordinator that I had asked the quarterback, hey, what do you like here? What do you like here? What do you like here? They weren't calling dumb plays.
But you just said they ask the players all the time. What if Jalen was like, oh, I like this look? And then what?
Well, then, I would say that doesn't work with this coverage. I would say, look, we can't run that play.
Yeah,
Jalen.
look, I personally just think your focus on the play is a little much when you look at the entire drive. Like, they went right down the field. Guys were open on, like, all the plays, right? A fourth down play earlier in the drive. He called a play to Goddard where Goddard got him open. The play before the fourth down, Devontae, the ball is in his hands. It's not a great throw by Jalen, but there's still a chance to make the play. Like, I just think the players ultimately decide this, right?
We just
right, but that's not on Patullo.
That goes back to the argument that Patullo is more of a scapegoat than an actual
correct
reason.
We're
why
all aware that someone had to be the scapegoat.
Look, Patullo's not going to be the coordinator, but
jettison.
Yeah, look, Eliot, he's not going to be the coordinator, but I also agree with your agreement with Ike. Conceptually, as far as offense goes and football goes, it's not the worst idea, but public relations wise, it'll just never occur ever.
Yeah, it would. I mean, it would be embarrassing for the team at this point. So, they're not going to bring him back, obviously. But I do think there's an argument they shouldn't have fired him, and that's kind of what Ike is saying to a certain degree.
Sure, exactly. Eliot, final thing. What's your reaction to the Phillies not giving Harrison Bader a 2-year, $20.5 million deal?
Yeah, I mean, talk about just bad PR, right? Like, I do think Harrison Bader is certainly overrated by the fans. Like, he was good for half a season. Ultimately, he was hurt in the playoffs. I think he overperformed who he was for his entire career. So I think there's an overreaction to losing him. But I just think, like, fans are furious this offseason, and I think they should be, right? The Schwarber deal, I think, is not aging well if you look at the rest of the stuff they've done. You look at what the other teams have done. So I understand why fans are upset. But I think we're overrating Bader as a player a little bit.
Now, real quick, I'm confused. The Schwarber deal isn't aging well. Why? Because you're saying they didn't get other people?
Because they're not going to be good enough. So, like, you went out and you paid Schwarber a ton of money. There's no doubt in my mind that in a year and a half, we'll look at that contract as a mistake. So, like, if you're going to go out and pay Schwarber that type of money, then I think you have to go out and make other big-time moves as well. Instead, it feels like they're just kind of walking the fence between, like, running it back but not really changing things, but trying to make moves. Like, Castellanos is going to be, like, traded, and everyone will pretend that's, like, a big change that they needed. Ultimately, they're the same team. And so I feel like they've walked the line where they should have done more. Instead, they've just stayed very much in the middle.
All right. Eliot, stay well, my man. Always good having you on the show. Thank you very much.